Good morning, beloved church, whoever and wherever you are. This is Pastor Jonathan Hart with Robertsdale United Methodist Church. It is Thursday, March the 11th, and I welcome you to this Lenten devotional video. We've been reading through the Gospel of Mark, and today we come to a story in Mark chapter 9, beginning in verse 2, that I would call one of the biggest moments in the Gospel of Mark. The climax of the Gospel and all of the Gospels is certainly the death and then resurrection of Jesus. But this is kind of the climactic moment before the climax that points to and leads up to the climax. Again, I want to welcome you today, and especially if you are a member of Robertsdale United Methodist Church, I just want you to know that I prayed for you this morning. I am praying for you today, and as your pastor, I would just love to invite you today, as we continue through this Lenten journey towards Easter Sunday and resurrection, to check in with yourself. I haven't said this every day, but Lent is a whole season of trying to really examine and take care of our spiritual health in special and intentional ways. And with all that has gone on in the past year, someone actually said before this Lenten season, why do we even need to celebrate Lent in 2021? Because after 2020, it was like the whole year was Lent. We had to give up so many things, right? Fast and abstain from so many of the normal ways and rhythms and habits of life. But that is also why Lent is important. It is a rhythm of the church, and it's something that we do to prepare our hearts for all that the resurrection is and means, and it's a way for us to truly appreciate it and celebrate it when we get there. So I just invite you today to check in with yourself and say, Lord, how is my faith? And be honest. It's okay if you find yourself in a valley right now, or if you feel low, whatever your feelings are, whatever's behind those feelings, to just give them to the Lord, because He is the God of all of it. He's the God of the mountains, and He's the God of the valleys. That's what we're going to be talking about this Sunday, and that's what we begin to talk about in our story today. This is a mountain story, and this is the story of Jesus' transfiguration. So in Mark chapter 9, beginning in verse 2, it says, after 6 days, so 6 days later, almost a week after the previous section, Jesus took Peter, James, and John with him and led them up a high mountain where they were all alone. There he was transfigured before them. His clothes became dazzling white, whiter than anyone in the world could bleach them. And there appeared before them Elijah and Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Peter said to Jesus, Rabbi, it's good for us to be here. Let us put up 3 shelters or booths, one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah. He didn't know what to say. They were so frightened. Then a cloud appeared and enveloped them, and a voice came from the cloud, "This is my beloved Son, whom I love. Listen to him." Suddenly, when they looked around, they no longer saw anyone with them except Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus gave them orders not to tell anyone what they had seen until the Son of Man had risen from the dead. They kept the matter to themselves, discussing what rising from the dead meant. And they asked Jesus, "Why do the teachers of the law say that Elijah must come first?" Jesus replied, "To be sure, Elijah does come first and restores all things. Why then is it written that the Son of Man must suffer much and be rejected? But I tell you, Elijah has come, and they have done to him everything they wished, just as it is written about him." So I wonder what sticks out to you in that story. I hear a bunch of things that are what I would call recurring themes throughout the Gospel of Mark. The word suddenly, the themes of both terror and amazement, both of those reactions that we see all throughout the Gospel toward Jesus, both of them are present here. But also just this moment where all that Jesus has been pointing to is actually revealed physically. That Peter, James, and John, this inner circle of 3 that Jesus invites up on the mountain with him, get to have this experience where all that Jesus has been saying and trying to show them is revealed in a dramatic way, as if the veil of the seen reality is pulled back and the reality of the unseen is climactically unveiled. And that is who Jesus really is. Now, before you jump the gun, it's easy to read this in our day and see it as a picture of Jesus' divinity. But it's important not to jump to that conclusion yet. It's not that Mark doesn't acknowledge that Jesus is divine, but that's not the point of this event. The point of the event is to reveal that Jesus is the Messiah. Jesus is part of, Jesus is the fulfillment of God's plan prepared before him by Moses and then eventually Elijah. Elijah, the last greatest prophet before Jesus, but then Moses, the prophet of old who was given the law. All of this leading up to the giving of God's Messiah. Peter, James, and John seeing. I always picture it as a triangle, as if Moses and Elijah are here and Jesus is here, and the two of them are pointing at him, as if to say, all of the law and the prophets are pointing to this one. He is the Messiah. He's the anointed one. It's also important to remember what Jesus has just told them, because God's command, as his voice thunders from the cloud on top of the mountain, which is an image that we've certainly seen throughout the Old Testament, isn't it? His command is, listen to him. This is my beloved son. This is my son whom I love. Listen to him, right? And I just can't help but remember, I know it's a week later, but what's the last thing Jesus said? The last thing Jesus said was when he rebuked Peter and said, get behind me, Satan. You don't have in mind the concerns of God, but the concerns of mere humans. You're thinking in worldly terms. You're thinking the way of the Pharisees and Herod. And I'm telling you that the Messiah, the messianic task that you've never understood, is to actually suffer and die for the sins of the world. That salvation will actually come through death and resurrection. They also must have been surprised when Jesus said that he would be raised on the third day, because in the Jewish mind of that day, even the Jews that believed in resurrection believed that resurrection would be an event for all the righteous at the end of time, that the resurrection would be something that all righteous people would experience at the same time at the end of time, when all things would be restored and put right. They never imagined that one person would be raised ahead of everybody else, and that there would be this in-between time where the Messiah would be raised from the dead and everybody else would just kind of go on living life as normal, witnessing back to the suffering, death, and resurrection of the Messiah that they had witnessed. This would have been a completely new mindset, and yet Jesus is trying to get them to understand that this is exactly what the Messiah must do. And then God's voice thunders from the mountain, from within the cloud, listen to him. I know it doesn't seem to make sense, but everything he's been trying to say, everything he's been demonstrating about how the kingdom of God is here, it's true. Listen to him. I wonder what you hear Jesus saying to you today. It occurs to me that right here in Robertsdale, Alabama, and the surrounding areas, and wherever you are watching and listening to this, that this is still the call of God the Father, is that the followers of Jesus, those who would be called the children of God, would listen to his Son, even when what he is saying seems to be bending the framework of our thinking, blowing our expectations out of the water, challenging us into new territories of what it means to go where he goes and bring the kingdom of God to bear in the broken places of the world. What do you hear him saying to you today? Jesus is God's beloved Son. Listen to him. I'll see you again tomorrow as we see them come down the mountain straight into the valley and continue a story of what happens there. And we'll talk Sunday about mountains and valleys as we continue this journey with Jesus. God bless you today. Grace and peace.